It's difficult to improve upon perfection. I know, some may claim that the CRB-27 crab is not without its flaws, but those people are wrong and should be shunned for their anti-crustacean views. Still, when the call went out for an alternative 50-ton medium mech which could meet the needs of the Star League Defense Force, Blue Shot Weapons took their chance and swung for the fences. The result was a flexible entry in the Star League-era battlemech pantheon which earned respect and found plenty of new fans as the centuries passed. Today we're going to spend some time looking at the Starslayer. It's a battlemech that has been around for a long time but is often overlooked in comparison to its more well-known peers at the 50-ton mass point. Stick around and let's get into the fray. Then Shakov saw that it had been shoved into the street, actually. A salvaged Starslayer repainted in Calmguard colors followed behind the Galloglass, lasers stabbing into the back of the Lyran machine. Damming his heat curve, Shakov added to the enemy pilot's misery by stabbing out with his 4 lasers. One sliced up into the head of the Galloglass, while both of the Starslayer's main weapons cored through the mech's back. Rattled, nearly decapitated, and caught in an untenable position, the Galloglass pilot punched out of the cockpit before a second salvo from either machine deprived him of the option. The struggling Galloglass crumpled onto the street, striking sparks from the ferrocrete before it lay there, motionless in an untidy but salvageable pile. Storms of Fate by Lauren L. Coleman. The story of the Starslayer begins not with its first regular deliveries of the mech to the SLDF in 2781, but 3 decades earlier with the production issues for an entirely different battlemech. Kosara Weaponries had secured a lucrative contract to produce the standard medium battlemech for the SLDF with the popular CRB-27 Crab. Unfortunately, the company had bitten off more than they could chew. Production runs were never able to meet demand, and by 2763 the Star League brass were looking for alternatives. One of the companies contacted to put together a proposal was Blue Shot Weapons, based on Loxley, which was located deep in Lyran territory. The Blue Shot design team got to work quickly, as opportunities like this didn't come along very often for such a modestly sized company. Additionally, promises were being made to produce the new mech quickly following the signing of contracts in 2765. For those of you who pay attention to dates, you're going to note this was an increasingly dangerous time for the Star League. The cracks were beginning to show in the grand experiment as the periphery powers began to push harder for independence. This included a high-profile defection of the 100th Hussar Regiment to the Magistracy of Canopus, and the beginning of the Periphery Uprising kicked off by the obliteration of the 165th Heavy Assault Regiment of the SLDF, which was destroyed on April 14th of 2765 when a nuclear weapon was detonated inside their base on Perdition. All of this added additional pressure to the SLDF, who then pressed the defense manufacturers to meet their contractual obligations. The STY-2C Starslayer was pushed into prototype and testing quickly with the goal of creating a 50-ton machine that could outmaneuver and outdamage the CRB-27 Crab without having to give up significant amount of durability. We'll see how successfully they hit that mark. The original STY-2C version of the Starslayer, produced in 2772, was built using a standard frame wrapped around a 250 Fusion engine. In order to give the Starslayer an edge over the Crab 5, jump jets were added to the mech's side and center torsos to allow the mech to leap up to 150 meters. This 585 movement profile was a strong selling point for the machine, especially for Lyran units operating in urban environments. The 2 advanced tech upgrades for the Starslayer were 11 double heat sinks and its 7 tons of ferrofibrous armor. Crab fans will be quick to leap upon the fact that the CRB-27 carried 9 tons of ferrofibrous armor as an advantage, and we do have to give credit where it's due. However, those 11 double heatsinks on the Starslayer sure look good in comparison to the Crab's 16 singles. Maybe it's a wash, we'll see. Though the loadout for the 2 battlemechs was similar, the Starslayer embraced the concept of yes and. It was able to replicate the weapons loadout for the Crab, but also add an SRM-4 launcher in its left torso, fed by 1 ton of case-protected ammunition next to the launcher. The 2 Blueshot designed large lasers, split between the right arm and right torso, could pump out damage at distance, but the mech was destined for close-range finishes thanks to the 2 left torso Raising Devil medium lasers combined with a Moonshot short-range missile forerack. Of course, we can't forget about the emotional support rear-facing Blueshot small laser in the head open critical. If the Starslayer copied the Crab's homework, it did so by channeling its inner Calvin and put the work in a professional clear plastic binder. The end result was a battlemech that had greater offensive power that could also keep that fire coming thanks to the 11 double heatsinks. The added mobility from the jump jets was the icing on the cake for the machine that highlighted just how powerful the shift over to double heatsinks was for battlemech design. What a shame that it was a technology that was sacrificed in the fires of the Succession Wars. Fingers caressed joysticks, eyes glued to the new countdown clock. A cry erupted from her lips as sight and sound returned in a savage avalanche as explosive bolts detonated and the wind sheer tore away most of the shell. The darkness hid the complex below, but the night vision setting on her Starslayer's view screen brought it into sharp relief of green and grays and blacks. For just a moment, the titanic monster could be seen, and no amount of fortitude or preparation could halt a shiver that wormed up her spine. We will make it. It cannot see us. It cannot see us. The seconds stretched into tormented minutes, harsh, glaring, and blatant in their declaration of the insanity of their actions. Land of Dreams by Randall N. Bills. Though the production date for the Starslayer was set at 2772, it was delayed that long due to persistent technical issues with the mech's targeting and tracking systems and delays in setting up the South Fork assembly plant. This, of course, was a source of great annoyance for the SLDF because Blueshot only received its contract due to the Crab's own production issues. Eventually, the STY-2C Starslayers did end up in dropships and served in units tasked with reclaiming former Terran hegemony worlds from Stefan Amaris's goons. There was some drama concerning shipments that were delayed due to what Blueshot weapons bureaucrats claimed was a lack of up-to-date shipping information. This caused tension between the company and the SLDF, which badly needed resupply, and there were rumors that Archon Robert Steiner II may have been intervening and funneling Starslayers into Lyran units instead. It's possible there was some truth behind this accusation, as it was reported that Blueshot weapons didn't seem to have any issue with fulfilling orders from Lyran quartermasters. As the Star League moved into endgame and the Great Houses began preparing for a major dust-up, large numbers of Starslayers continued to flow into Lyran stockpiles. The SLDF did finally end up receiving their contracted shipments, but it required playing hardball with contracted penalty clauses which forced the company to pony up with the battlemechs. With the collapse of the Star League, Blueshot weaponry was suddenly out of a major contract. Thankfully, the Starslayer was in high demand, and not just by the Lyrans. Though not nearly as common as other mechs of the age, those who could wield the Starslayer had an advantage over lower-tech battlemechs. During the First Succession War, the Lyrans used their Starslayers against the Free World League, including a strike on Bella where a pair were deployed in an advanced recon role. They ID'd and then leapt upon a Free Worlds League lance consisting of 2 Orions, a Phoenix Hawk, and a Hermes II, which sent the Merrick mechs in all directions. A direct hit against the Phoenix Hawk's cockpit evened up the odds a bit, and the Hermes II was cut down moments later. The 2 Orions had a firepower and armor edge over the Starslayers, but the Lyran mechs had agility on their side. For the next 3 hours, the 2 pairs of mechs played a cat-and-mouse game in a dense forest. The Starslayers were able to whittle down the armor and use their energy weapons consistently, while the Orions had trouble scoring hits. With ammo bins dry and armor shattered, eventually both Orions were disabled. The incident highlighted just how much agility and a bit of surprise can make a big difference in a fight. something shot me, but 021's wireframe barely registered yellow. I ignored it and ran for the blitzkrieg. My LRMs went wide because why the hell did I fire them in the first place? Long-range missiles, jackass. I toggled the Mydrons to cluster rounds, which weren't nearly as loud as the slugs, and watched them merely sand paint off the blitzkrieg's side. It was enough to save the Hopman, though. The ugly mech's shot went wide, and the Starslayer severed its leg with precise laser fire. 021, Shrapnel Number 21, by Lance Scarinci. Along with most of the other battlemechs that had to endure the First and Second Succession Wars, the Starslayer became an increasingly rare sight on the battlefield. The double heatsinks that had been the mech's trump card now hobbled it as the heatsink technology was lost. Damaged Starslayers had to be jerry-rigged with single heatsinks or packed away until repair parts could be found. Many gathered dust but kept the dream of the Starslayer alive. As the mech struggled to survive in the inner sphere, the Starslayer found continued success in the deep periphery among the forces of the fledgling clans and their foes on the Pentagon worlds. The fractured SLDF Exodus fleet survivors clashed during Operation Klondike, and the Starslayer was there for all of it. The first of the Starslayer variants was developed by the Nova Cats, who modified the weapon's loadout in 2823. The basic structure of the STY-2C-EC remained unchanged from the original, but with the weapon's loadout that was upgraded with a collection of prototype weaponry, which hinted at the advancements of the coming Golden Century. The two large lasers were swapped out for clan-improved large lasers, which could fire out to 15 hexes for 8 damage at 8 heat generated. Their benefit was that they only took up 1 critical hit location and weighed 1 ton less than a standard large laser. The two medium lasers were replaced by prototype ER medium lasers, which could reach up to 12 hexes for 5 damage at 5 heat. The head-mounted prototype ER small laser could do 3 damage for 2 heat out to 5 hexes. Finally, the trusty SRM-4 pack in the left torso was upgraded to a prototype Streak SRM-4 with a -1 to hit accuracy bonus. Its 1 ton of ammunition was still protected by case. Though the benefits of the prototype clan weaponry were limited, this variant hinted at the possibilities of the platform. The Starslayer 2C-EC is also the closest thing we're going to get to a Succession Wars variant, so enjoy it. It wasn't until 3056 that Blue Shot weaponry finally got around to taking another look at the now classic Starslayer design. The production lines on Loxley had been idle, and it was beyond time to put them to work in these years following the clan truce and before the Federated Commonwealth imploded like the last family reunion I attended. The new CEO for Blue Shot, a Gualtiero Marino, was a descendant of the company's last CEO and was determined to keep the legacy running. Through deals forged with other companies like Telfar Battlemechs, Northstorm Technologies, and GM of Cathil, Blue Shot was able to produce new Lynxes, Cestuses, and even bring the Starslayer line up to proverbial code. All 3 of these mechs were produced at a desperate pace in order to generate the numbers necessary to cover their investments. Without going too deep into the weeds, Blue Shot's design team sought to address the biggest complaint from the STY-2C Starslayer. The STY-3C would benefit from an upgrade to Endosteel, which allowed for the bulked-up 9.5 tons of ferrofibrous armor. That was a jump in armor of almost 36%. The good news is that this makes the 3C a much more durable battlemech. The downside is that nothing was changed with the weapon's loadout. As much as I whine about slapping ER large lasers onto battlemechs, not doing anything with the standard 2 large lasers in 3056 was a missed opportunity. The only rationale I can come up with is that perhaps there were still warehouses crammed with standard large, medium, and small lasers that could be purchased in bulk on the cheap, and Blue Shot weapons figured it'd be fine. Now, before you flip the table and loudly announce that you're taking your ball and going home, just 1 year later in 3057, an alternative variant designated the STY-3D provided a more creative option. The 3D once again took advantage of Endosteel, 9.5 tons of ferrofibrous armor, and maintained the 585 movement. However, the 12th double heatsink was added to help with the modified weapons loadout. The SRM-4 and right torso large laser were sacrificed to free up enough mass for the installation of an extended-range particle projection cannon in the right torso. The right arm large laser remained along with the 2 left torso medium lasers. Finally, the head-mounted small laser was upgraded to a standard medium laser facing that rear-firing arc, which of course is comfortable on cold evenings in the tundra. One mech warrior named Robert Vargas earned a reputation working for the Blackstone Highlanders, a merc unit which ran up against the Jade Falcons and persisted up until the 3080s. Vargas was known for using his Starslayer 3D as a long-range skirmisher. The ERPPC and large laser combined with the mech's agility, allowing Vargas to keep his distance and burn down opponents. As of the last available report, he had 7 mech kills over the course of a decade and earned a bounty from a pirate band operating out of the Rack, a former Rimworld's Republic planet. The Cobra mech warrior took more convincing. Even with the arrival of a Valexian hunchback, the Arcturian Guard mech warrior refused to admit defeat as it struggled back to its knees. He also managed to slam a double handful of missiles into Shakov's right flank, blasting away the last of the Exterminator's armor on that side. Then the Starslayer cut the Cobra's crippled leg out from under it, while Shakov's lasers sliced off its only good arm. As the valiant machine toppled backward, the Hunchback's 12-centimeter autocannon tore off its remaining leg for good measure. The allied mech warriors left it on the street, helpless in the path of an approaching 6th Lancer infantry platoon. Storms of Fate by Lauren L. Coleman. In 3075, Blue Shot would take another bite at the apple with the STY-3DR, which is, shockingly, a sub-variant of the 3D chassis with 12 double heatsinks. The 3DR Starslayer benefited from 2 structural changes. The first was the shift over to 10 tons of light ferrofibrous armor, which provided 169 points of protection. This was the same net result as the 9.5 tons of ferrofibrous, and it saved on critical hit locations. The second change was the installation of triple-strength Myomer, which offered the potential for faster movement and improved physical attacks when over a heat threshold. It's not a bad thing to carry when you're already expecting to get into the thick of it. It's very on-brand for the Starslayer. Instead of a pair of large lasers, the primary punch for the 3DR was the heavy particle projection cannon installed into the right torso. With 10 tons of mass, this weapon could earn its keep to make the build viable. It would also have to be used consistently along with the 2 left torso medium lasers and extensive jump jet use in order to take advantage of that triple-strength Myomer. In the case of the 3DR, the 12th double heatsink is a detriment because even a full Alphastrike, not including the rear-facing medium laser, left the Starslayer at just 23 heat on the run. In order to move into the red, it would have to fire that head laser or jump jet. Hitting the TSM's 9 heat sweet spot would be difficult and require multiple turns. Not even an Operation Sneaky Sneak Guardian ECM in the right arm can make me give this one an A+. Hey Mini Frog, what's the ruling on the Starslayer 3DR? Oh, he gives it 3 gummy bears and this flashlight that has a dead battery in it. Out of 5. Concerned with the belligerence of neighboring periphery states, the NIOPS Association dug into their first Star League records and started production of both the Nighthawk Mark 11 and the combat-oriented Nighthawk Mark 12. In 3071, the Marian Hegemony's 6th Legio Rapiensis attempted to raid NIOPS 5, but they were totally unprepared for their first encounter with power-armored infantry. When the Gatus Anufri Sopakchek's Starslayer went down under a swarm of Nighthawks, the invaders broke and ran. Nighthawk, Mark 11, PAL, TRO 3075. Unfortunately, there's only one more official variant for the Starslayer, and it's on the other side of the Word of Blake kerfuffle. Blue Shot weapons largely avoided the widespread destruction wrought by the Blakeists, with their Locksley facilities still running at 95% of capacity in 3079. The Locksley facility was spared from the violence and saw drops in productivity due to disrupted supply lines and resource shortages, while planets like Tharkad, Hesperus, and Coventry were hit quite hard by direct attacks. Throughout the 3060s and onward, the Starslayer became a staple of FedCom and later Lyran Commonwealth military units. While not exclusive to them, you're far more likely to see one in a Lyran Striker Lance than anywhere else. The next best bet would be mercenary units that have worked with the Lyrans and former Fedcom Davion units. There is a report of McCarron's armored cavalry finding a cache of Star League STY-2Cs while horsing around on Menki. That explains why the mech was highlighted in McCarron's armored cavalry sourcebook. Side note, the sourcebook labels the mechs as 3Cs, though that was later corrected by errata, so no yelling at me in the YouTube comments, okay? One of the more notable Starslayer owners was Faith McCarron, who was the adopted daughter of Marcus Baxter, who was elected to take over leadership of McCarron's armored cavalry in 3050. Faith and her brother Ramses were raised with the expectation that they would follow in their father's shoes and lead the unit someday. With extensive training and gaining valuable experience, Faith proved to be an exceptional mech warrior and leader. Faith drilled her unit to make good use of a wheel and thrust flanking tactic that involved spinning her unit around a fixed point while not sacrificing her formation. She was able to push into enemy positions using her Starslayer at points that were most vulnerable. This, of course, played into the Starslayer's advantages. Faith's journey unfortunately ended at the Battle of New Canton when she ran into a Hastati Sentinel Legionnaire, which was able to nab a lucky cockpit shot with an autocannon. Her unit, the 4th Battalion, was renamed Faith's Fortitude in her honor. Unfortunately, all those pleasant memories were overshadowed by the memory of her last visit, when she had been ordered to report to the capital in the wake of the Battle of New Canton. The day everything changed. She vividly remembered being summoned before the Strategios, the Strategic Planning Committee of the Confederation, and futilely attempting to explain how one of the most respected units in the Capellan Confederation armed forces had been bested by units of the Republic of the Sphere. She had been lucky to return from that foray merely tarnished, having not been in command at the time of the defeat. The Strategios told her that her refusal to abandon the body of her commanding officer, Faith McCarron, had been one of the few admirable moments in that dark chapter of her unit's history. Thoughts of Sang Shao, Lindsay Baxter, McCarron's Armored Cavalry. Greywatch Protocol, The Highlander Covenant, Book 1, by Michael J. Ciarvella. Hopping down to our latest entry in the Starslayer Pantheon takes us all the way down to 3145, where Blueshot has taken another crack at updating this gem for the IlClan era. Of course, it's up to us to see what we can do with it. The STY-4C benefits from some brand new technology, including clan spec weaponry provided from both Defiance's upgraded production lines and Clan Seafox, which would of course sell anything if the price is right. Our new Starslayer once again uses endosteel wrapped around a reliable 250 fusion engine. The 5 jump jets are still there, thankfully, and the armor coverage has returned to standard plate, with just 10.5 tons of it, which is just 1 armor point shy of the max for a 50-ton battle mech. Triple strength myomer makes its return, and a 13th double heatsink was added to polish off the non-weapon hardware. With that out of the way, the weapons loadout is where the 4C shines. Like so many other IlClan designs, the 4C's loadout is a nod toward the original. The 2 primary weapons are a pair of improved heavy lasers set into the right arm and right torso. Their 16 damage apiece, out to 15 hexes, automatically makes this Starslayer a danger to every mech on the battlefield. Unlike the 3DR variant, the 4C is going to have no problem triggering the triple strength myomer, as each of the heavy large lasers generates 18 heat per shot. Ignoring the rest of the loadout, firing both on the rung would leave the 4C at 12 heat, which is all you need, and then some for the triple strength myomer speed boost or a good swift kick. If things get too toasty, a left torso mounted coolant pod can boost the 13 double heatsinks to cool by an additional 50%. If you do need to give the big lasers a breather, twin clan spec ER medium lasers set into the left torso provide their reliable 7 points of damage out to the same 15 hex range spec as the improved heavy lasers. Out of tradition, the laser returns to the head of the open head critical location, though this time it's a clan spec ER small laser. Finally, an improved one-shot SRM-4 was installed into the left torso, matching the mech's OG look and providing just a little extra punch when the time is right. The STY-4C Starslayer is a solid performer, but not for the green mech warrior. Anytime you get triple strength myomer into the mix, things can go from excellent to perilous pretty quickly. The clan spec weaponry is great as usual, but those improved heavy lasers still explode for 8 damage if they're crit, so watch that right side when you're in the thick of it. Cammy eased her right-hand joystick to bring the targeting reticule into line with the enemy machine, and was already firing twin large lasers almost before the tone of a lock sounded in her ear. The beam slammed into the right torso, vaporizing armor and causing the hunchback to stumble backward. A brace of long-range missiles found their target in the middle of it, sending the 50-ton mech cascading backward to the ground. Her mad grin of joy took on a tone of condescension. This is the best these Macmillans can give us? Land of Dreams by Randall N. Bills. Today's totally unofficial and non-canon MechFrog variant of the Starslayer comes with some backstory. Yes, it's a shameless plug for the Tortuga Planet Primer video, which bombed last Monday, so please humor me. Our story begins in 3148 with an explosion. Well, technically it was an implosion, but let's not get too caught up in the technical stuff. One way or another, a space rat with big dreams named Rutledge Mink found himself staring at the silent remains of the ship he was contracted on as it slowly slipped into a deteriorating orbit around a long-abandoned marginal world. With no going back, he could only turn and continue his journey to the junked dropship that brought the crew out there in the first place. After torching his way through the now-defunct airlock using the extending arm from the spacesuit, Rutledge was able to wedge himself inside the ship's darkened cargo bay. After a flick of several buttons on the inside of his glove, the spacesuit's headlamp kicked on and bathed the partially crushed bay in red light. There, standing in its secured bay, was a battlemech. Painted white, the machine looked as if it were fresh off the assembly line, which automatically set it apart from every mech that he had seen out on this corner of the periphery. Pushing off the bulkhead by the airlock, the salvager got a better angle and look at the markings on the mech's legs. It was no surprise when he saw the downward pointed sword. That and the paint job gave away the owner. This was a Word of Blake battlemech. The dropship must have been hit by the Ravens or Filtvelt. It really didn't matter now. The owner was likely not alive to worry about ownership. Rutledge smiled to himself as he realized that if he could somehow survive for long enough for his emergency beacon to reach help, he was now the rightful owner of a brand new battlemech. Out here, where you have to scrape and salvage everything you ever own, this made him a very wealthy man. The Starslayer 3DR MF, spotted on the outskirts of Raider's Roost in 3081, has been described as suspiciously well kept. Painted in a green and orange camouflage that would serve no purpose on Tortuga other than to make a bigger target, its owner, the now renamed Rutledge Rex, insists the mech was a family heirloom. The mech is a one-of refit based upon the STY 3DR with some rather terrifying changes to the weapon's loadout. The only structural change from the 3DR was the removal of the double heat sinks down to just 10 included in the engine. This opened up some space on the mech and made it easier for Rutledge to take advantage of the benefits of triple-strength Myomer. The mech's primary weapon was a right-arm mounted snub-nosed particle projection cannon. Bolstering its mid and short-range fire were a pair of ER medium lasers on the left torso, along with the short-range missile forerack in the right torso, which Rutledge routinely fired loaded with Inferno ammunition. Each side torso had been reinforced with spikes, which reduced the damage from incoming physical attacks on those locations by 4 points to a minimum of 1. The attacker also takes 2 points of damage to the limb that carried out the attack. On the offense, should the MF charge a target, the spikes add 2 points of damage apiece. Not too shabby for Tortuga's rough and tumble life. The last of the offensive weaponry is a sword in the left hand. Is it min-maxed? No. Is it awesome? Yes. So the Starslayer has a sword. For the uninitiated, sword attacks replace a punch from the same arm and have a -2 to hit modifier, and do 1 damage per 10 tons of the mech's mass rounded up +1. So the Starslayer MF sword does 6 damage. However, if the triple-strength Myomer is active, that damage is doubled to 12. The fanciest bit of kit on the mech has to be the laser anti-missile system, which keeps the mech looking good and not slathered in Inferno gel. It also keeps the mech running warm and triple-strength Myomer hopping. The Starslayer 3DR MF reflects the rough and tumble existence on Tortuga, as well as taking good advantage of that triple-strength Myomer. I'm sure that Rutledge Rex would have a ball in it. If you'd like to take the MF out for a spin, I've included the PDF record sheet and Alphastrike card in the video notes below. Enjoy. So why do we love the Starslayer? This is a bit of a mixed bag response because while the original STY-2C battlemech is very strong, its limited number of variants down the timeline struggle to show forward progression. On the bright side, the STY-2C is great and can absolutely pull its weight in your Succession Wars battlefields. The newest variant, the 4C, is not an entry-level machine, but it does live up to the hype. I'm glad that the Starslayer is going to stick around as we march further into the IlClan era. But what do you think about the Starslayer? Is it a mech that deserves more attention, or are you distracted by the inevitability of crustacean dominance? Is there a variant that you think is the mech in its ideal form? Please let me know in the comments and we'll keep the discussion going. I'd like to know how you feel about this one. Thanks as always for coming out today. If you think the video deserves it and you want to show your support, the easiest way to do that is to hit the like button, subscribe, or even leave a comment. All of these things make the YouTube algorithm happy. If you want to go one step further, direct support through KoFi is the best way to help ensure that the nonsense keeps flowing. YouTube channel memberships are still a thing, but with all the uncertainty on the platform recently, it's best to support outside of Google. No matter what, it's appreciated. Without strong community support, this would not be possible. With that, I'll say thanks again, enjoy your week, and please go out and make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.